With the attendance, I think we do have a quorum now. Diane? Okay. So we're going to, Laura, do you want to go ahead and call the meeting to order? It's 5:58.
Yes, at 5:58, I'm calling the meeting to order. And thank you all for coming this evening so that we can have a quorum and actually conduct the business of our committee. Thank you. Well, so we'll go ahead and get started with the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Does anybody have any changes? Any amendments?
Motion to approve. I move to approve the last meeting minutes.
Thank you. Yes.
Randy, I'll second.
Terrific. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Do we have anyone on for public comment?
No, we're not aware of, we don't have anyone here in the boardroom for public comments, and I don't see anyone on virtual.
Great. Okay, so Dr. Sheffield, would you please give us the CAO update?
Yes. Again, good evening, everyone. I'm glad that we're able to meet this evening. Our last official meeting for this academic year. In getting started, because we do have, if you look at the agenda, Keith and his team, I knew they were here with us a few months ago, and then from the last meeting, we had Diana and the team that went through some of our benchmark pieces. And so again, I'm sorry that I was not able to join you at the last meeting. And it was my understanding that you all have asked for Keith and his team to come back around some student attendance and some initiative updates in which we have going on as we continue to try to re-engage our students here in the district. So I'm not going to take much time because they have quite a few slides, and I want to make certain that we respect everyone's time and also make certain that we have time to engage in their conversation this evening. But for the CEO update, some reminders, definitely an exciting time of the season. On this coming Thursday, we will kick off our graduation ceremonies for the class of 2022. So we are definitely excited, gearing up for all of the ceremonies and just celebrating with the students and their families for this extraordinary milestone in their lives for the class of 2022. I'm sure that you all have been following a lot of media, a lot of legislations or things that are happening within our realm. I'll start with our most recent around textbooks, particularly around our math textbooks, if you've been following what's been happening there. Initially, we were very concerned because our math textbooks, this is the year that we were up for adoption. We went through the process, and we're ready to order our instructional materials to make certain that we have the materials in hand on our campuses for our students and teachers at the start of the school year. Initially, when the list came out, we did have some textbooks that were on the list that the state had deemed as being not approved. Well, we left it up along with the publishers because these were some of the largest publishing companies such as Savos, which formerly known as Pearson, H&M, and so forth. So many of the publishing companies had appealed the decision to the state, and if you've been following, many of the textbooks and things that were deemed having issues had been placed back on the state approval list. So with that being said, that was definitely great for us here as a district because we always want to make certain that when we're ordering our instruction materials and so forth and following that process, it helps if our books are on the state's list. Regardless of we're able to use 50%, of purchase 50% of our books not being on the state list, but we would like to also, it's just great practice to try to utilize what's on the state list if that's the way the committee works out. Make a long story short, and summing this all up, right now what we're still waiting on is that we're still waiting on our 7th grade math as well as our probability and stats for secondary. Those are the two remaining books that is under review by the state in which the publishers have appealed to. So we are hoping that this week sometime that matter would be cleared. But we have moved forward with ordering the remaining of our math instructional pieces. So that's the update as it pertains to how it will impact us here as a district. Now, the other part, the other piece of the update, I'll give you as much as what I can give you, is around, the House bills, the ones that have been indicated that we need to make certain that we're in compliance with as it pertains to the start of the school year, particularly around the Parents' Bill of Rights, 1557, House Bill 7, and then there's also House Bill 14 around library media books, Keith, 1467. So anyway, what we're doing here as a district, we do have a group here. We're working with the attorneys, and we're just having to peel back and take a deep dive and look at these bills and do in terms of what we feel that's going to be appropriate, assisting our teachers, the school campuses, and so forth. Because we all know the state is not releasing any guidance or anything until school year 23. So with FADS, the superintendent's advisory group, they're at the state. We've provided a listing of questions that they have went to DOE on the behalf of many districts, looking for some clear guidance. So we are following it, trying to just get some clear guidance to make certain that how we are handling this, it's in the best interest of all parties, because we do want to be in compliance, but there's just a lot of unanswered questions and uncertainties. I am attending what we call FOIL, which is the Florida Organizational Leadership Conference in the state. They do attend to give us all of their updates, and I'm attending that conference the latter part of May. So we are sure the state will be at that particular conference and give us some additional guidance, but we are working here as a team with our legal team and other stakeholders here, pulling together the guidance and the structure to where we can work over the summer and be in compliance, because that is the expectation. So that's a quick update from myself.
Thank you for that update. I do have questions regarding that, especially with the last part of the bills that you were referencing. How is it that we're going to enable teachers to give instructions which include references to boys or girls when we're not supposed to be talking about gender identity? How is it that we should even have directions as to which bathrooms children should be, quote unquote, should be using, because we're not supposed to be having discussions about gender identities? And are we going to make sure that schools will no longer have activities that are focused on, for example, some event with mothers and a different event with fathers? Because again, those are gender identities. And I think if we're going to be scrubbing any discussion of any LGBTQ identities, we need to make sure that we do a thorough version of that. And for example, and I know it was satire that the comment about using only the pronoun of they so that it's not gender specific. And I know that was satire, but it makes an excellent point that if we're going to live by the letter of this law, then we cannot use any form of gender identity.
So if you're asking me in terms of what we're doing, Laura, I will have to go back to you, say again, we're working with the legal. We have a strong team here that's working to where we are working out the cadence. I don't have those answers that you're looking for, here this evening. This is going to, of course, take us some time as we are, to your point, there are so many moving parts here. So whereas we go through and we're deciphering, we're taking this one bite at a time. That's the best that we can do. And as the other groups, around the state, and we provide our questions, and we're just working with the states in terms of just getting clear guidance and maneuvering through some of these pieces.
So can we hear an update about this specifically in our next Academic Advisory Committee meeting?
Well, your next academic advisory would be at the start of the school year, so we would have to have it figured out or made some leadway by then, and by far, it definitely could be an agenda item for August.
Okay, that would be great.
May I add something to this topic?
Yes, please.
A colleague of mine at FAU, Dr. Delise Scorman, did a very thorough analysis of the legislation, which we passed on to Keith Oswald, and I presume Keith passed it on to Dr. Sheffield and other members of the administration. It's incredibly well done. Since most people haven't read the analysis, let me just summarize it this way. There's a discrepancy between what the law says and what the advocates of the law want. Okay? What the law says is that teachers cannot use their position as public employees to proselytize or to advocate any particular political or other point of view. As someone who's been involved in teacher education for decades, that isn't how we teach teachers to teach. So in fact, what the advocates of the law have done is they've created a straw man in order to knock it down. So what Dr. Scorman suggests in her analysis is that we should hold them to the letter of the law. Yes, we will not use, if we talk about the Tulsa Race Massacre, we will lay out the facts and let the students come to their own conclusion. The problem is that what the folks who pass the legislation really want is they don't want these topics discussed at all. They don't want anything which is going to get, little Johnny or little Susie's sensibilities concerned or cause, quote, distress. Now, how can someone who is teaching guarantee you that if they tell the whole truth, some student is not going to not like it? And that's the problem. That what they want is one thing, and what they passed, it's like passing a law that says the sun has to rise in the east. It's going to rise in the east whether we pass a law or not. And teachers are not using their classrooms as kind of political pulpits, as the legislation surmises. So I don't know if members of the committee would like to see that analysis. I'm sure the district can make it available to all the members of the committee. I have read it thoroughly, but I think it does a marvelous job of parsing the fine points in the law, and it might be a useful tool.
Thank you, Dr. Diaz. Thank you for the summary. I would like to have a copy of that.
Yes, can that be shared with the committee?
We'll have to send it out.
Yes, I'm sorry, my mic. I'm trying to get my mic on.
We just need to ask Dr. Sherman if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Diaz. And Dr. Diaz, we have looked at that with the legal and with all of our discussions, but we would just need to make certain that the author, that it is okay for us to share it out. And you may have the answer to that.
Yeah.
I
think she's a good friend of mine. If you just send her an email and she'll respond quickly, I think she will be agreeable.
Okay. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Charmaine, I think Charmaine hands up, Laura.
Terrific. Charmaine?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So I wanted to ask, I know Laura had asked about the update, and that update wouldn't be available until August, and this law come into effect, at least some portions, a great portion of the law come into effect in July. If possible, that we can, whatever decisions that have been made or legal have come firmed prior to this law being signed in July, if we can get an update via email to the committee of whatever update that you would receive, versus us waiting until August, and we'll be able to come ready whatever questions or concerns we may have come August, And, we'll just be better equipped in August rather than hearing about it in August, waiting to September, and 2 months have passed since the law has been in effect.
I think that's an excellent idea, Charmaine. Thank you. If possible, can we receive copies of what the instructions will be to teachers regarding this?
I will put that will be captured in the minutes, and I'll follow up with Lisa, because you have to remember we go into a new year, so your membership is probably even going to change. Because what we do, I do want to just make certain that offering us next year in functioning, that we're able to function as a working group, and hopefully we can get back to some of this, in person. And then we had to cancel quite a bit because of not having a quorum, and just wanting to make certain that the members that are participating with us is going to be able to work alongside with us to where we are not held back as much as we were held this year because of not having the quorum. And I know some of it I have reached out. It's just not being able to travel or having to make some other decisions. So our membership will slightly change some. But I'll follow up with Lisa, our attorney for this group. And if we can send that out, because we will be out of session, absolutely.
And that would be great. And I realize that anybody new would not be starting until the beginning of the school year.
Absolutely.
I believe.
Absolutely.
And so this would be coming to our members I assume, by the end of June, since the law goes into play come July. So if in June it could come out to our current board members, I think that would be very helpful. And then the membership issues for our committee are a slightly different issue.
Absolutely.
But I agree that we want to be as effective as possible in the next year and try to have everyone show up on time so that we don't play the waiting game.
Thank you.
And Keith Oswald, I see that your hand is raised.
Thank you. I don't know if I'm out of line, but I just want to say that there's a number of questions that school district superintendents sent to the DOE around these bills. A lot of the questions and issues that are being brought up here through FADS, the Florida Association for District Superintendents. So a lot around the similar questions that are being brought up. So that's why we are proceeding cautiously as well, because there's more questions than answers that are coming out right now. So I just want to put that on, that a lot have been brought up to the DOE that we need answers.
I understand. And I understand that you all can give answers only to those that answers that you've already received, whether it's from legal staff or from the Department of Education. But we're just asking if you could share that. That would be great. And Carlos, I see your hand is raised again.
Yes. One of the really troubling aspects of this legislation is the enforcement mechanism. It allows individual citizens to sue the school district in the event that they think that the district is engaging in whatever the complainant might view as teaching CRT or anything related to that. My advice to the district, and I'm sure probably the district is already working on this, is legal needs to do a careful analysis and come up with a series of very specific guidelines, one for administrators and one for teachers. And that needs to say to both of those groups, if you stay within these parameters, you are safe. Because it is my firm belief that part of the goal of this legislation is to create chaos and confusion, which it has certainly done, as evidenced by Mr. Oswald's comment about how many questions from superintendents have already gone up to DOE. Frankly, my personal opinion is DOE does not know what they're doing. When DOE rejects a math textbook, and ostensibly the reason for the rejection is there was a group cooperative activity to have kids work together to solve a math problem, and somebody interprets that as being an offshoot of critical race theory, what that tells me is they don't know what critical race theory is. And what's happened is everything that people may or may not like about schools is now being called critical race theory. And that confusion in schools, I know, is going to result in teachers simply not getting near certain topics that are part of the curriculum for fear that somebody is going to sue the school. And if I'm not mistaken, because I haven't seen the final draft, I don't know if they can sue teachers individually. But the district needs to be clear and say to teachers and principals, if you stay within these parameters, we will have your back. Because you can't be a first-year teacher worrying about having to pay lawyers for a lawsuit. Even if you're in the right, you lose. You know, this is serious stuff, folks. This is very serious stuff.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'll say this, and I know we have to move on to the next topic, but I would like to just add on to Mr. Diaz or Dr. Diaz, but it's a question for Dr. Diaz. To what guidelines would the district use when the DOE currently does not have any guidelines for them to, or any standards to uphold? So what would be safe when no one knows, the guidelines? There's no standards, there's no guidelines from the DOE. So how can the district actually say, stay within these guidelines? What are those guidelines and what do they look like? Because the DOE don't know what it looks like. And I mean, unless I'm mistaken, and, Mr. Oswald or Ms. Sheffield, Dr. Sheffield, please interrupt me, but there is no guidelines. There is no standards. So right now, the district that's why legal is getting involved, because there is no guidance. Absolutely no guidance at all. There is no safe space because they don't know what's safe and what's not safe.
I think the confusion is not accidental. The confusion is deliberate.
Thank you all, and all of your points are well taken. And, the small work that we have here, in working with the legal, it's just that we're going through it with a fine-tooth comb, and we're trying to create, some checklists that will help us help the teachers, as we go through classroom libraries per se, from K3 to 3-5 in terms of what the law says, and going through. So we're just trying to create these cadence that's going to the best of our ability right now. And if we make a mistake, it will not be anything that's deliberate. We're doing the best we can with what was dealt to us. And that's how we're working right now. We're trying we know we have to move forward. We're doing our best, and it's a team.
I'm sure that you all are, and appreciate all the effort and time you all are putting into trying to make this as finding the ways to work with this as much as you
and
can.
we've reached out to other districts. Many districts have not. They are, many are, waiting to see if anything would come out. And, many like myself, others are saying, we are going to go up on the 23rd, 24th of May to FOIL. And DOE will be there. And, again, maybe we'll get some additional guidance. But we're here in Palm Beach. We're just going to work with our legal team and work with each other. Dr. Diaz, again, we do appreciate you sending that over. We have looked at that thorough analysis, and those are the kind of pieces that help us catch some pieces or catch some points that we may have missed. But so many eyes are on this.
Can I also please make a request that in the guidance of how to work and live essentially within this law and the parameters of this law, that there's also a information included for both administrators and for teachers as to how they can still be supportive and of assistance to their students who are impacted more so by these laws. For example, students who are LGBTQ, and so that we can still try to minimize as much as possible what I would expect would be some form of disenfranchisement from, if that's the right word, but the difficulties that will arise for those students as this is impacted. And whether it's students who have questions about the anti-woke bill and topics, or if it's regarding the LGBTQ issues. If there can be just guidance as to how to help support these students, I think that would be really important.
So noted.
Thank you so much. Okay, and I guess now we can move on to equity and wellness, speaking of which, with regards to student attendance initiatives. Keith Oswald, you go ahead.
Keith is going to share his screen. Keith is going to share his screen. I think it will navigate a little better. So he's going to pull up his screen.
Okay.
And again, good evening, everyone. Joining us here tonight, I'm not sure if you can see them, but they'll wave. You might be able to see that little square there. We have the Director of Safe Schools, Ms. Diane Wyatt, and a manager also within the department, Amy Mazzacco. You've probably seen both here before in the past. So one of the tasks that we've had, and one of the biggest challenges that districts ever face, and we've all ever faced, is really addressing attendance issues. In addition to addressing that attendance issue, this particular department was also tasked with addressing the students who never really returned back to from the COVID lockdown. And so, we've experienced or seen our families who have experienced some incredible hardships that no one should have ever gone through. But we're still working on this challenge of some of our most vulnerable populations who are, still yet to return back to brick and mortar, trying to work with families, so serious issues. But what we really want to first start with is, school attendance has always been a challenge for the school district. As you know, not just here locally, but nationally. There's a lot of work that studies this and how do we increase attendance of students. But it's only been exacerbated tremendously throughout this year. So we want to go through and just kind of talk you through some of the language and what we use between, what we talk about chronic absenteeism versus truancy and some of the work we're doing. And then, my big ask at the end is going to be that for each of you, whether you're an individual or you're representing an organization, that you go out and educate people about the importance of school attendance and student achievement. So I'm going to turn over to Diane and Amy, who will start us off with some of the presentation, and I'll be jumping in a little bit.
Thank you. So when we talk about attendance, we look at it as truancy and chronic absence. Truancy basically is what the statute talks about in Florida, where we're counting unexcused or unverified absences, and they have specific guidelines in the law about 15 unexcused absences in 90 days is considered truant, and then specific actions that we have to take. And then we also look at chronic absence, which includes all absences. So a student who maybe has a chronic illness and misses a lot of school would be considered chronically absent. And that's defined nationally as a student who's absent 10% or more of the school year. This is a nice infographic that we have from Attendance Works that shows you how important attendance is in the early grades. You can see there's a significant difference between students who miss a little bit of school and those that miss a whole lot of school, whether or not they're reading proficiently at the end of third grade.
And this, I want to jump in. So if you don't know, if you're not familiar with Attendance Works, but they've been studying attendance for probably decades now. We've actually had some of their consultants here in Palm Beach County through the Early Learning, not Early Learning Coalition, but Children's Services Council. And interesting, this study was done pre-COVID, so it's only gotten more challenging. So now I want to jump into a dashboard that we created, and so switch screens here. Hopefully this will work. Okay, so this is a dashboard just to kind of, as we continue in the presentation, to help you understand how serious this particular issue is. So you're probably having a hard time reading this. So I did export this first slide, and I'll go back to the dashboard in a second, but I want to show you so I can zoom in a little bit more. But first I want to go into, in the upper right-hand corner, hopefully you can see that. But so what we're looking at here in this data is school district in whole from 2020 to 2022. So we skipped the 19 school year the 21 school year for obvious reasons. And we're looking at up to the third marking period between both years. So we're trying to work to compare apples to apples. Because in March of 2020 is when we shut down at the end of that third marking period. And you can see back then, average number of absences in 2020 up to that point, just before COVID came, was students average about 5.5 days of absences. In 2022, up to the third marking period, it averaged 8. And you go along, you can see when we're talking about 5 or more, 10 or more, 15 or more. So at 5 or more was 41%, and then it jumped to 54% in 2022. And you can see considerably how it gets much worse for those at 10 or more, 15 or more, and 20 or more. So where it was just about 4% for 20 or more days, which is not great either. When we talk about 4% of 180,000 kids, we're talking about a lot of kids. Now we're approaching 10%, 9.5% of kids out 20 or more days, which obviously, I don't need to tell this group, is detrimental to the academic career. So when we drill down along this particular dashboard, here we have by race and ethnicity. So one of the populations that we work to monitor closely is black. So this first group, I want to just zoom in here. So you can see in 2020, if we look at 5 or more, it was at 35%. For black students, it jumped to 51%. And then the 4.4% for 20 or more almost tripled, so at 11%. When we look at Hispanic, similar pattern, but it's going up 46% of 5 or more up to 60%. Probably our most challenging population when it comes to student attendance. Again, 11.7% for 20 or more. You can see the pattern continues for multiracial, Native American, and then over to the far right is white students. In addition, this was shared at the District Diversity and Equity Committee. Some of the feedback they gave was make sure we went down further for students with disabilities and English language learners as well as FRL. So I do want to point out the information. So this is English language learners to non-English language learners, as well as just the data of English language learners from 2020 to 2022. So this particular, hopefully you can see my cursor, but right here, we're at 44% for 5 or more for English language learners, went to 58.5% in 2022 this year, and similar pattern with 4.2% to 11.5%. And to the non-English language learner counterparts, they're at a higher level. When we look at free and reduced lunch, again, a similar pattern where students who are on free and reduced lunch are having a higher number of days not attending schools compared to their peers. So 44% for 5 days to almost 60%. And then the 5% for 5 or more to more than doubling that to 12.7%. Then we look at students with disabilities. Again, similar pattern, 46 to 58, and then 6.4 to 12.9, so doubling, much higher than the non-ESC students. And then just if we look at gender for male and female, similar demographics, pretty close in numbers there. So you can see, obviously, those numbers are extremely high, and something that we have to focus in on, that we've been focusing on. Our first priority through the department and the resources that we received from ESSER was finding the students just that are completely truant and not in attendance at all. So this particular dashboard we developed this year to support schools. As you go through change this to the next slide. As we go through the next tabs that are available in this particular dashboard, the schools, each of the schools are listed where they can drill down by all those same disaggregation at the school level, which is obviously important for them, but ideally then is getting down to the individual student and providing those interventions and support to get students back in school. So I'm going to go back over to the presentation where we're going to pick it up from this particular dashboard, and I got to change my tab. That's my problem. Okay. Sorry, I'm not used to working off one screen, and a little more challenging. So we're going to talk about some of that initiative about finding those students in non-attendance.
So a new bill was passed last year, House Bill 5101, that does require school districts to locate some of these unaccounted for students. And they specifically identified students in which we are working on locating. And these are students who were enrolled during the FY20 school year, but then kind of disappeared throughout the year, as well as students who completed the FY21 school year and were expected to return for this current school year and didn't. They also require us to establish a multi-agency work group, and we did that, and we meet monthly. Also, the House bill specifies that once an unaccounted student is located, and if the parent or guardian prohibits the facilitation of enrollment, then we do have to file a truancy petition per Florida statute. And there's a breakdown of our numbers of where we started with the two groups of students, and roughly together it's around 5,600 students, I believe. So this is what the demographics look like. For this particular group, these are the students that were enrolled during FY20 and withdrew during that school year or stopped coming to school during the school year. And just like Mr. Oswald had presented with the other data, our largest group here is the Hispanic population. And you'll see that in the next slide also with our students who completed the FY21 school year and were expected to return, but did not return to school. Again, our highest demographic there is Hispanic. So this is some current data as of today. Of those students, 637 are actively enrolled in our district. We have confirmed the whereabouts of 3,448. A lot to private school, some dropouts. We do have several who are deceased, some enrolled in home education, a lot are out of county, out of state. And we are also in the process of completing the required documentation to update the withdrawal status for the remaining 2,793. And just in looking at the case manager's logs, a lot of those students have moved away, but we'll have that updated information in the summer when we compile our end-of-year report. Some of those students have confirmed that they do not plan to enroll in school again. We're seeing that with some of the 18, 19, or 20-year-olds. We have 250 students who have been unreachable and that's after we've attempted home visits, called every phone number that was in our student information system, and we are currently working on obtaining correct contact information to continue to contact them. 950 students, follow-ups needed, and that's for various reasons. We have students that are planning to enroll. At this time of year, it's been difficult to get parents to enroll their kids. They want to wait till the following school year. We have some older students who are not wanting to return, so we're working with them to try to get them to return. And we still have 350 students in which the contact attempt has not been made yet. So with our initiative, we have established a multidisciplinary team to facilitate a systemic approach. Our grant provided hiring additional staff to assist with this project. To date, we have 21 staff members that are working on re-engagement and truancy, and they are divided up into regional teams to assist. So our approach is a systemic approach in which we are utilizing a multidisciplinary team to help remove barriers to enrollment and attendance by providing the assistance, resource, and referrals that are needed. Absenteeism is a sign that positive conditions for learning are missing, so we have social service facilitators working with case managers to help mitigate some of the challenges that these families are experiencing. So a little bit more about truancy, and this is defined in the statute. The compulsory age required for students to attend school is 6 to 16. So if a student is absent at least 5 unverified absences within 30 days or 10 unverified absences in 90 days, then we are notifying the parent via letter. Beyond that becomes intensive interventions. That would be like school-based team meetings. Once it reaches beyond 15, then the student's actually considered to be truant. So these are some of the interventions that our schools and district are doing to help with truancy. Obviously, the phone calls, emails, letters. We have an attendance contract, changing in the learning environment, such as changing a class, changing a teacher, suggesting a home education for a student who has chronic absences, parent conferences, mentoring, referrals to counseling, getting a tutor, coordinating services. This is something that we're seeing a lot with our students who are not enrolled in school, that they need additional outside agencies to assist so that they can take care of some of the issues at home before they're able to actually get enrolled in school. We're doing home visits, and we're also referring students to SINSFINs. So this is, okay. Graduation Alliance is a company that we have contracted with for 2 different programs. We are working with them to help us to locate some of the students that we've not been able to find yet. And they're also providing an academic coach for those students, and that's K-12. And then we also have a dropout recovery program with them that is a virtual pathway to a high school diploma. They provide the students with a laptop. They also provide the student with a hotspot if the student does not have Wi-Fi. And again, they also provide an academic success coach that works with the student to help keep the student on track and working towards completing their credits. Right now, we have 19 students enrolled, and we have 33 pending students. They have to do several things before they can actually get enrolled. One of them includes a meeting with their academic coach.
So I want to just talk a little bit more about this before we go to the next slide. So when you think about the numbers that Amy talked about, thousands and thousands of kids doing a line of work that we've never done. So basically becoming detectives, right, to try to find these students. The team has done an outstanding job, knocking on doors, making phone calls, doing everything we can to make sure we find these kids. So when you find a family, so it isn't just like it's all wonderful situation. Oh, we forgot to go to school and just get them enrolled. They're dealing with families that have serious challenges and issues that have to be problem solved, case managed, resources. So it's not just a student struggling, the entire family struggling. So working to get them all the resources they need to get them back in school. Some of them become pretty challenging. In addition, when we're talking about those numbers, we investigated different companies. We did put this bid out. Graduation Alliance won that particular bid, where they do specialize a little bit in this space of what Amy talked about, the attendance recovery, where they're assisting us through social media and many other platforms to find the ones that we can't find. The academic coach, when we went through the whole process, to me, it's like almost like an online mentoring that the student can reach out and call anytime for support. And these are kids that, remember, these are the kids that were not in school at all. So these were kids that, we're not talking about the ones in the school center. And then we talk about this dropout recovery program. So what's nice, so you think about Florida Virtual, many you can think about Florida Virtual, but this is kind of like Florida Virtual for like a normal kid, I would say. So, Florida Virtual kid, you got to have a lot of good habits, right, to get on and do your work. This provides a lot of additional support. So you have the mentor, you have the coach, you have someone checking in on you. I can't believe they already have 19 because this didn't go to the board till I think it was March. So this started late. And they have projected a kid who would have been a dropout on track to graduate this summer. So some of these kids that are engaged, they've got some secret sauce, but the kids are really motivated and really are working to where they would be dropout to get a standard diploma. And it's a Florida Palm Beach County diploma, which is also great as well. So sorry, I just wanted to add into that. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Thank you. So this is where we're reaching out to stakeholders for your help. We could definitely use your help to help us build awareness. And if you're aware of students who are not attending school and any of the barriers to attendance, we would love to hear your input and help these students. And then,
many of you represent different organizations from PTA, you run your own organizations, ESC Advisory and others, Dr. Diaz with HEC, educating communities and circle of influence about the importance of attendance is going to be critical as we move into, obviously this school year is almost over, but huge campaign that we got to continue not only through the end of the school year, but into next year. So if we can just finish one more slide and then go to questions.
Yeah, so we are in the process of updating our attendance policy. Not a whole lot of changes, but we added the definition of chronic absenteeism, updated that our student information system is the location where we maintain our attendance records, and then we added language to reflect the preventative and intensive interventions that we do prior to a student actually being truant.
And with the whole truancy and the packet piece that we talked about briefly just before we go into the questions, I do want to make sure. So Ms. Wyatt, myself, we're working with Judge Kroll and her team. You saw that committee we talked about, are we getting to a point where we've exhausted interventions? So we talked about SINS and FINS. SINS, FINS is children in needs of services and family needs of services through the Children's Home Society. DCF referrals, all these things that are required for a packet to go together. where we still can't get the family to come in to register. Are we looking at doing these petitions? Yes, one, because it's required, but two, because we've exhausted, many resources, but also working with the courts to make it an environment that's supportive, having other agencies and resources. So once we go down that path, that we're really trying to support the entire family. So I'm going to, Madam Chair, I'll turn back over to you for the Q&A or discussion. Laura, you want me to go ahead and just call in the hands I see?
Yes, please. Erica? Well,
okay.
Erica, you're not muted. I mean, you are muted.
I think that's Rachel.
Sorry, I'm trying to multitask. So when you showed the slide of children that had, or students that had dropped out due to going to private school or moved away or, various reasons, I saw that you broke it up by demographics dealing with race. Did you break it up with children with ESE status? Did you see how many of those children were classified as ESE?
So we do not have it broken up by that. That is something that we can add and can definitely add for our end of the year report.
I think that's important because, just being part of that community, I hear from a lot of people, the reason they're leaving the school system and, from my neck of the woods is because they're not feeling supported. And they're not getting what they need and therefore have to go either to homeschool or private school. So I think that is something you want to catch, because if we can stop that and provide the services here, then we're not losing these people to different. So I would love that to happen if you could see the statistic on that.
Thank you. We'll work on that. That's a good point. Dr. Diaz?
Yes, the data that you provided basically tells us what is happening, and it is no surprise that COVID has had a devastating effect on attendance in all groups, probably Hispanics being the most significant. But it doesn't tell us necessarily why it's happening. In other words, some families may be having financial hardships, and that results in the child not coming to school. Some people may have moved away, but there may be a number of cases, like Erica pointed out, where the child does not feel supported, or whether the child does not feel welcome at school. And we don't have any idea as to the why. We know the what, but we don't know the why. And I think if you want to get a good handle on this topic, you have to know both.
Absolutely. And the team is collecting that data, where we're creating these trends of what we see in families. So, and there are many different issues, and no two family is the same. We can tell you that everything from older kids having to get jobs to help support the family and pay the bills. You've got to the extreme where some families are worried about COVID and COVID coming into the household still. And so it's health related. And everything in between, families that need financial support for a variety of reasons, right? That just, there are many different issues. And yes, are we problem solving to address it and come up with the themes? Absolutely. I can tell you it's a phenomenon that we've never seen before. So trying to create what those trends are. So in the future, how do we attack it more strategically? Absolutely, Dr. Diaz.
Let me give you one additional conceptual lens for new research or added research on this matter. There are certain reasons that the district cannot do anything about. And there are other things that the district can control. So if we're talking about a child not coming to school because they feel inadequate at school, that has to do with both school and classroom climate. That the district can do something about. If, on the other hand, it's an offshoot of financial hardship for the family, The school can't control that, but the school can help get social workers and other people involved to see what we can do to help the family. We need to look at both sides, not just what is happening outside the school, that is raising truancy, but we need to look at what is happening inside the school that is raising truancy, because that is a piece that we can control. So, for example, if I were to ask you, what is the school climate data at Forest Hill High School for ELL students? I don't think we have that. I don't know why we don't have that. We have all other kinds of data. If I ask somebody, what is the mathematics achievement?
We do have the climate surveys that came in, that were sent out. So that just came back recently. So absolutely, but you're absolutely right. So we have to address climate, because bullying, all those other issues that will keep kids from coming to school on a regular basis.
And Keith, let me ask you this. How many students take the climate survey?
Not as many as I want to.
My understanding of the climate survey is it's sent home to parents. But the critical people that need to address the climate survey are the kids.
There is a version, Dr. Diaz, for the students and for the parents.
Okay.
So they're separate. But to Keith's point, this year, we put it out because we didn't do it last year. And the participation is not where we'd want it, and we recognize that. So we're actually reevaluating for next year what we need to do differently, because we need the voice of the parents and the students. But we did do it this year, both groups.
I agree with you. I think that's a critical piece.
Yes. Listen, culture will eat strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I totally agree. Sherelle?
Sherelle?
Hi. So I wanted to see in your study that the data that you have there, how many students or families did you discover were homeless? Because I don't see any reporting of that. And if you did find that they were homeless, what does the district do to help facilitate that? And I know you mentioned in there about social services, but I would like to know, or at least see, how many students that you found were homeless.
So, I don't think we had a homeless category, but if students are identified as homeless, as a school district, that's a different line of work of resources. I don't know why, if you want to. So we do a number of things as required by statute for homelessness. Do you want to talk about some of those things we do for families?
Yes. As one of the nice things about having this work within Safe Schools is we also have the services for our homeless students, our kids in foster care, and our kids that are teen parents. So we are finding that as we locate these students, we are seeing those that are homeless. We're identifying them as homeless, and we're helping get the supports in place, working with the parents for clothing needs, for food needs as well, along with connecting them with resources within the community that will help provide them with that support. So we're identifying them, and that means helping get them to where they need. Our teen parents that we have found that are at home because they did not realize that we could provide child care for them, we are getting them into that child care class and getting child care arranged as well for their child so that they could re-engage. And Dr. Diaz, I did want to let you know that in regards to your last question, one of the specifics in looking at climate, when our social service facilitator and our case managers are working with the kids they find and seeing why they're not there in school, we are looking at, okay, they started but then they dropped out because they had a problem with the teacher they were assigned. So we're working with the school in order to get their schedules changed, to get them moved to a different school where they feel more accepted, that type of thing as well. So we're looking at each case individually to see what is the need and how can we assist with meeting those needs to get you back into school to be successful.
So, Cheryl, back to your question. A lot of so our resources are basic needs from clothing, hygiene. So we have funding to support that kind of work. Trying to keep a stable school. So if you're at a school that you like, transportation needs,
School supplies.
School supplies. That's why I talked about referring out to other agencies. So those who can provide some temporary support when it comes to housing. Obviously, the real issue is permanent housing. If someone's homeless, why is it? Because we don't have a place to live, right? So again, a very, very difficult situation. There are a lot of different collaborations that this department is working with other agencies on a regular basis to problem solve and support family, as well as the county commissioners. There's a task force there that supports this work as well that we're part of.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, just to clarify, so we've got the data about the statistics as to all but 350 students as to where they are and what decisions they've made regarding future schooling, but we don't have a good summary of the problems that they've encountered, which has been a hurdle, for lack of a better word, for them to overcome in order to attend school. Do I understand that correctly?
So, so our goal right now is, one, to find the families and make sure they're enrolled. So so Amy's task is, okay, we find the kids, let's get them in school, and if they're not in school, why, so we can figure out how to get them in school. Not necessarily to analyze data. Are they keeping notes as to why families aren't working? Yes. So do we need to do and go back and collect all that? Right. But our immediate is kind of like triage. We're just trying to stop the bleeding and get the families back into school and problem solve that. That's what we're working through right now. Once we triage that and get through the entire list, so the ones that we can't find and still haven't located, we haven't stopped. But I'll give you an example. There's a family where the student literally, this is another phenomena. So some of the lists that we're getting is a lot of families, when we came back to school, went into homeschool. So in homeschool, if you don't keep up on the requirements for homeschool, you get released from homeschool. A lot of these families were in homeschool, and that's not part of this list. The families didn't do what was supposed to do, which was required under homeschool. So now we have to go through that list because many of those kids are not enrolled in school. And so we're dealing with issues where kids have had interrupted education for a year and a half. Now we're getting closer to 2 years. Now we're working to problem solve what's the best placement if I've missed this much education. Where do I put you? I can't believe we're having this conversation because I've never seen anything like this before, where we're dealing with a large volume of kids that have this. Used to see it if kids left and went to other countries, but now we're seeing it right here in our backyard, where kids have interrupted education for long periods of time, and not just, a handful, we're talking many, and we're working on finding the best placement so we can get them caught up back to their cohort as well. So each situation, is very difficult and complicated to manage and work through. Are we trying to analyze so we can deal with it systemically? Sure, but right now we're just trying to put the fire out. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, Laura?
It makes sense. I do have a follow-up question, but I'll wait until after Cheryl.
Okay, but so Keith, let me just say this, and I'm going to try to be as nice as I can be, but I resent the statement that you just made about how you can't believe you're having this type of conversation. Because when it comes to parents, and if you've ever been there in a situation like that, then you would know that that is very sensitive. The people that you're looking for and the children that you're looking for, you're never going to get there because you have that attitude. People take their kids, they're using their kids, they know where their kids are. You have people right here in your own neighborhood that won't tell because they feel people, like the statement that you said.
So my statement was directed to
So
us
when
address.
you start talking to
But
black
Cheryl,
people,
I'm going to interrupt you because I'm going to take that personally because my comment is about the fact that we have the volume that we have because of COVID. Okay, I've worked in this for almost 30 years in this, working with a space and working with families. So do I understand that families go through a lot? Absolutely. Am I saying having an attitude that resenting a family because they're in a situation? Absolutely not. We're fighting to make sure that we give them the resources they need to get back on track. So let me be clear about
Are you sure
that.
you're fighting for them, though? Are you sure you're just fighting for them?
You can look at my track
Because
record and you look at my track record and where I've
on
worked, Cheryl, and you'll see, yes, I'm fighting for them.
Keith, I'm not challenging you on your record. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that when you're looking for a child, you have 350 children that are held unaccountable for. There's a reason for that. All I'm saying is that when you're talking to a parent as myself, maybe not other people on here, but I know people that are homeless. I know families that are going through it. And they're not calling you because of those type of statements, so you know. And I'm not going to challenge you on that because I highly respect you. I know that you do a great job. So I'm just saying I felt resentment. And it's just something that it's all a conversation that it needs to happen. COVID was something unexplainable, and we're still working through it. So that's all my statement was.
Okay, I appreciate that.
So I'm going to go ahead. Oh, Randy, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Keith, I have a question, and the last comment just kind of brought it all to around circle for me. When we're looking at the numbers this year, I know we have always looked at the numbers of what they've said, truant children. I know that the school district has always tracked them. How are they compared now to pre-COVID?
Can you define, so when you say truant, are you saying that meet the legal definition?
The kids that are missing. The kids that we don't know where they are. So you said we had, I forget the number you said, in that one graph that you showed us. So, the kids that have basically disappeared from school, and not just the kids. You can't get in contact with the families a lot of the times. What's the comparison between now and pre-COVID for those numbers?
So that's a good question. So in the past, like typically in Palm Beach County, we've always seen, I think what sparked it is when we saw at a national level so many students not returning back to school that this particular issue was addressed differently than the past, since our enrollment dropped, 7,000 kids, 8,000 kids. So, and then, districts throughout Florida, most districts saw a similar pattern. So, I don't know if we have, we never compared it that way. I could tell you just with the decrease in enrollment, I think it's shined a light on an issue. Maybe that's what you were saying before. Shine a light on something we didn't pay attention to that we should have.
Okay. And I can also understand the number of children with disabilities not coming back right away, for it being higher than normal. So many of our kids with disabilities are fragile health-wise, and I know their families have been reluctant to send them back, a lot for that reason, for medical reasons.
Yes, absolutely.
Carlos?
Yes, I'm going to have to leave the session a little early, so I want to wish all my colleagues on the committee a good summer, and I will see you in August.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. It's been a pleasure this year.
Thank you, Dr. Diaz.
Good to see you, Carlos.
So I'm going
Bye-bye, Nika.
I'm going to ask my follow-up question. And I realize you said that their focus is on finding the kids and meeting the needs and that cases are complicated. And so there has not been time to analyze data. But are there issues where you're seeing more often there are students who are not coming back to particular schools more so than other schools?
We've really not seen much of that at all. I think we've only had like a handful of cases that specifically mentioned that they didn't want to return to their specific zone school for a reason. And those we have tried to address.
Okay, well that's, I guess, good. But you also mentioned issues with bullying, that's been a contributing factor.
No, I was saying, like, we know that when a student is being bullied or perceives being bullied, that it will address, when we talk about the attendance, we'll, have a direct result on whether or not they come to school. So if we're not creating that environment where Dr. Diaz was saying, where every kid feels safe and cared about or someplace to turn to for assistance, it can affect attendance.
Something else I would like to mention is that this grant that we got to do this is very new, and the work at the beginning of the school year started out with probably about 2 people, I think, something like that, and we hired just about 5 people in March. So we've really been doing a lot of this work with not a full staff.
Okay. It's appreciated, and I know it's a lot of work and a lot of details, and the time it takes to help each individual person and their family is time consuming, obviously.
I mean, I think I can tell you the trend in the older kids, probably either they're helping the family out to support the family. This is where the Graduation Alliance is working out well for some of those kids, or motivation, very serious, family issues. And we're trying to, make sure we find the right setting so that we get them back. The younger kids deal with more complicated family dynamics in general, where the student has less control, but the family needs more support. And we are partnering, and we have regular meetings with many, many different agencies to help with those supports.
So here's a slightly different question. Are we concerned that we will see more students leaving school again after this school year? Has this school year been enough of an improvement for the students who are back in school that we're not going to be looking at more students leaving next year?
I think we've trended out. You can see, we've got many kids back into school and being supported. So I think we've kind of leveled off. Are there still serious issues when it comes to, students with mental health challenges and needs? So, there's still many complicated issues where we're going to have to support our students. I don't think students are going to leave, but I think we've leveled off. And I think hopefully we're just going to go back up and trend upward.
Has the district, have you all considered doing some kind of almost marketing campaign for during the summer to help keep up and improve enrollment in order to let families know of the help that they can receive in order to make this a positive experience for their children?
Yes, that is something that we're working on, is an attendance campaign, not only to get students enrolled, but for students who have been attending and haven't had the best attendance to improve their attendance. Your ideas are welcome, though, for the marketing campaign.
Understood. Okay. Does anybody else have any other? Oh, Eric, Rachel, I see your hands up.
So I heard that we have a lot of data that shows that people shows the type of student that has either dropped out or is no longer attending or is truant, and one of the things you're going to add is ESE students, because that wasn't represented, especially with the dropping out. But one of the things I think would be helpful, and I think Dr. Diaz mentioned it, is the why behind either of those two occurrences. So, and I know there are a multitude of reasons, but could you classify them like financial hardship? Could you classify them as, unsatisfied with the academic? Can you classify them so we can get sort of an idea of reasons why these things are happening? Could that happen?
So yeah. So there are trends, like you said, in classifying. So yes, is that because the team knows? Because I ask that same question to them all the time. What's the root cause? Like, how can we get better at supporting families long term? So yes, we're working on that. So that information is going to be very valuable. How we support families moving forward in the future.
That would be great. I think you do need a field that gives an explanation, and then have a group of, have some buckets that represent different reasons. So great. I'm happy that you're doing that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Laura, I want to call the time at 7:15 just to respect everyone's time.
Certainly. So thank you all very much for coming tonight. And as Dr. Sheffield mentioned, it's 7:15, so the meeting's now adjourned, and we will see you or the appropriate person who will be representing your organization bright and early in August, and you'll be notified. And please do your best to be on time for the meeting, because it makes a difference in us getting the work done. Thank you so very much.
And I also want to just thank everyone for their active their participation and support during this academic year. And I'm looking forward for those that will be returning in the fall. Thank you all so much. Definitely appreciate it. And I'm sure we will probably talk, during this summer, during the course of all of this. But for those that we may not communicate with, I wish you and your family a blessed summer. But thank you again.
Thank you so much. Have a great summer, everybody.
Have a great summer, everyone.
Take care. Have a great summer, and thank you to the staff for their continued support of this committee. I know how busy you are on a daily basis, and the time that this takes, and it's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you all.
She said, very much so. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.